So in any case, you can look at this submission from the Crown Prosecution Service and you can make some connections that I think are important to understanding. But I want to leave my story and just highlight some of the quotes from this submission that I didn't include in my report, just give people who are watching this show something fresh that they can dig into. So the first quote I'd like to share here says, if the prosecution of Assange, as opposed to any journalist or newspaper which published the WikiLeaks materials, is part of some war or intended to chill the media, it might be thought wholly inconsistent with that aim that it was accompanied by an announcement which made plain a policy not to prosecute journalists for reporting, and that the Department of Justice did not regard Assange as a journalist. So if you can follow that at all, the Justice Department says Julian Assange is not a journalist, and they also said when they announced the indictment that they don't have a policy of prosecuting journalists. So we should all just let this go. We should just let the Assange prosecution go forward and be happy that it's an exception to the rule, and they're never going to use it in the future to go after journalists. So even if you would agree, I don't, but even if we would agree that he's more of a hacker than a journalist, the way they're going about this, we would never have to be worried in the future like press freedom organizations are, because they themselves, so they're never going to do it. I mean, obviously that's ridiculous. I don't think we should trust the government to hold to that. And you could have Donald Trump part 2 or whatever come back into power, and if this was a precedent, they could go forward with going after whomever. So I frankly don't care about the pledges or commitments of administrations or agencies of government, because at any time they can go back and violate those. The second thing I want to work in here is them saying that the defense has got it all wrong about what Julian Assange is charged with committing. And so what they outline is that he is complicit in illegal acts to obtain or receive voluminous databases of classified information, that Assange had an agreement and attempted to obtain classified information through computer hacking, and then that his publishing certain classified documents contain the unredacted names of innocent people who risked their safety and freedom to provide information to the United States and its allies, including local Afghans and Iraqis, journalists, religious leaders, human rights advocates, and political dissidents from repressive regimes. So the issue I have with this is the government is still pushing their conspiracy theory that they have about how Julian Assange recruited Chelsea Manning to do this work for him and to serve WikiLeaks' goals, which are the ones that are promoted by U.S. intelligence agencies. That's the way they want us to negatively view WikiLeaks as an enemy of the United States. They themselves are saying that he was complicit in these illegal acts to receive the databases of classified information. So he's putting Chelsea Manning up to providing the classified information, referencing the chat logs, saying that he agreed and attempted to engage in computer hacking. Again, they have not been able to prove that there was any meaningful effort to crack a password or crack the password hash. It's even more specific than just that. We went through that evidence from the trial on the show previously, so I won't go through it again, but they had Patrick Eller take the stand. He's a former U.S. Army computer crime investigator, and he basically demolished everything that they've been trying to say about what Assange did in agreeing to a kind of password cracking conspiracy. And then you have this thing about the publication of unredacted names, and it must be stated and made clear that there just isn't any law in the United States that says you can't publish names. So even if you accept that the government can punish Julian Assange, who's an Australian citizen, and prosecute him for violating U.S. laws, well, it's actually not a crime to publish unredacted names of people, whether they're innocent or not. I mean, I don't know what they mean by innocent. Some of these people may or may not be, which was something that Julian Assange did. I mean, I don't know who these specific people are. I don't know what they were doing. Sometimes we align ourselves with some pretty unsavory characters in order to prosecute our wars. It's been known to happen. I mean, we're arming jihadist groups in Syria. So who are they talking about? Are the local Afghans and Iraqis? Are they warlords? Who are these people that are in danger from the WikiLeaks disclosures? They don't say. They can't. They claim that that's classified information. So it's not something that they put out in the record for us to dig into. Then thirdly, I have down here that the allegation is that the U.S. proceeded against all international legal norms to violate Mr. Assange's asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy. This is simply wrong, and the evidence does not substantiate this allegation. But even if it were true, the defendant was a fugitive from justice as regards the United Kingdom authorities and a suspect in the United States while in the embassy. Mr. Assange's grant of asylum was not an immunity. The rule of international law simply makes the embassy of a foreign state inviolate unless the foreign state invites the host country in. And I know that those words are pretty sterile. So what it means is we are going to hide behind the fact that the United Kingdom wouldn't recognize the institution of asylum and allow Julian Assange to have the protection from the Ecuador, that was given to him from Ecuador. They insisted and maintained he had jumped bail, probably because the US was pressuring the UK. And so we do not accept that he was ever anything but a fugitive from justice. And so, again, this is making a complete mockery of the institution of asylum. Just a couple more quick quotes from this before I wrap here. There's one more that's important. They state, no doubt, a change of administrations in the United States of America would eradicate the defense allegations that the current administration is intent on persecuting Assange. I think this is a really important sentence in this submission, so I'll read it again. No doubt, a change of administrations in the United States of America would eradicate the defense allegations that the current administration is intent on persecuting Assange. So the big argument that is being put forward in the defense's case is that Donald Trump's administration, with people like Mike Pompeo and Jeff Sessions, politically made the political choice to go after Julian Assange, and it was different from what the Obama administration decided to do. It was tarnished by a political drive to go after WikiLeaks, and because of what it represents. And so they're saying because Joe Biden won the election, there's a change of administrations. They're basically hinting that Joe Biden's going to come into office, the Justice Department is going to continue this case, and it'll be harder for the defense team to say that this is a politically motivated case because you will remove the Trump factor and you'll have Biden embracing this case potentially. And if he continues with this going forward, it's going to make it bipartisan consensus. It's going to become a thing. So far we can point to a disagreement, but if he goes back on what Obama did, then this is something the Justice Department is going to hide behind to suggest that Assange is actually being treated fairly. They're going to claim that they're applying the law fairly because now you have people in the Biden administration potentially who believe that the Justice Department did follow proper procedures. So to me, it's kind of alarming. It puts me on alert for whatever's going to happen next with the Biden administration. And then to close, I have to read this because it's truly heinous what they articulate here about Assange and his family. So I want to get this out. It is in the section of the submission that refers to the passage of time and the injustice that stems from bringing this case 7 to 10 years later. And as it says, they believe that Assange evaded justice, and it goes on to address the fact that he now has children. To the extent that Assange relies on changes in personal circumstances which have arisen during the period that he lived at the embassy, notice they say lived, they can constantly say lived He's not an asylee. He's not somebody who had protection. He was just holed up there. We know holed up is something that they usually have as the language in the mainstream media's coverage. They say he lived at the embassy. Then the only changes known to the prosecution are that he's had 2 children. Again, any decision Assange made to establish a family life when, on his own case, he faced prosecution and was living in an embassy expressly so as to avoid extradition, was a decision made in the full knowledge of how precarious the foundation of that family life was. His family life was built on foundations of sand. And so I want to say that he's, like a 50-year-old man, very nearly. And so he was middle-aged and he made this choice to have children. And it's very clear from the timeline of events that he formed this relationship with Stella Morris, and he had children believing from the last few years that there wasn't going to be a case brought against him and that eventually he was going to be able to leave the embassy. And in 2017, around Christmas, he had secured diplomatic status and was working on getting to Ecuador, and I didn't think there was going to be a legal case at that point. It had been 4 years, at least around that amount, since the Obama administration had basically passed on bringing a case. We saw that covered in the Washington Post. And so, I don't know, this thing of foundations of sand is very crude and vile to me. And I think, it suggests that he had these children just to play them off as kind of pawns in a game. And to me, I think that's probably projection, because it sounds like something the people who run this country might do to get some kind of edge over a political adversary. I tend to think most of the people in our government are projecting when they say things like this, because this is what they would do. But I think he very genuinely wanted to have this family, and for them to suggest that he's doing this as a way to further his criminal life or further his evasion of justice or whatever is very crude.